Okay, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you, everyone. Hello and welcome to day one of the conference supporting school mental health in the wake of COVID-19. We're so happy to have you here with us. We've got a wonderful 2 days planned with presentations from regional and national experts. And we're very excited that you've carved out time in what I know is a very busy schedule to get prepared for going back to school in what are very unique and challenging times. So we're going to start with just brief introductions of the two centers that are co-hosting the conference for you. I'm going to begin by introducing the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, and then I will turn it over to my colleague, Amy Malloy, who will introduce the Mental Health Association of New York State. And then after our brief introductions, we'll turn it over to our student speaker, who's really going to help ground us all in why we do this really challenging but very important and impactful work. So the MHTTC is funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA. And the intention of this funding is to enhance the capacity of the workforce to provide effective services and supports to people living with mental health conditions. And this includes educators, school administrators, and all school staff. And so we do events such as today's to try and enhance the ability of individuals in schools and supporting our youth and students to be able to address any mental health concerns that they may have. Our regional center addresses the needs in New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. I know that some of you are joining us from outside of that specific region. And so I did want to let you know that there are comparable regional MHTTC centers in each of the 10 federal regions. They're represented on this map by different colors. And additionally, there is a National Hispanic and Latino MHTTC, a National American Indian and Native Alaskan MHTTC, and a network coordinating office. So I encourage you, if you are in any one of these other regions, that you visit their websites to learn more about the specific activities that are available through those centers. I did just want to highlight that SAMHSA is particularly interested in supporting the work of school mental health. They have provided additional funding to us to focus on this capacity building. And this allows us to provide training and technical assistance for teachers and school staff on school mental health services and supports. So here on this slide are just a variety of topics that we're able to provide. So specific topics for trainings, but also we can work more individually with schools and school districts to develop individualized plans on a variety of topics. So this is just to give you an idea, but if you are interested and you're within the Northeast and Caribbean region, you should feel free to contact us to have more in-depth conversations about how we might be able to support your needs. We do also encourage you to subscribe to receive our emails to be informed about upcoming events, products, and resources. We both talk about what we're providing, but we do also share information about activities and products that are developed by the other regional MHTTC centers. So before I turn it over to my colleague, I did also want to review a couple housekeeping items related to this conference. You have all received via email a conference program, and I encourage you to keep this handy as we go throughout today and tomorrow. It provides the times and descriptions of each of the sessions. It also provides each session's Zoom link. So underneath the session description, you will see a separate link to join each session. So please use those. Better yet, you can access all of the conference information, including presenter slides and resources, as well as the Zoom links on our conference webpage. And my colleague, Katia Rivera, will go ahead and post the conference website in the chat box now. So if you'd like to access that, if you give her just a minute or two, she'll be able to post that there. Okay. We have 3 additional sessions after this morning's session today. So we have one focused on social and emotional learning techniques starting at 10:15. Then we have one focused on crisis and loss starting at noon. And then one supporting student mental health through uncertain times starting at 1:30. You'll notice that we've built in small breaks, 15-minute breaks between each sessions, and then we've also built in a 30-minute break for lunch. So we hope that that will allow you to stay with us throughout the day, taking some breaks to move around and take care of any other business in between sessions. I do want to take a moment and just put in a plug for completing our evaluation surveys. We want to hear from you. We want to gather your input. This is also important for us to be able to show our funder that we have people attending and what they think of our services. It's a very brief survey. It takes about 1 to 2 minutes. There is a survey for each session. So you will see on your program that there is a survey link underneath each session description. So please click on that after the sessions to tell us what you thought. If you're joining us by computer, you will also be redirected to the survey following each session so you can complete it that way. Did want to let everyone know that we are recording each of the sessions, and those recordings will be available on our website after the conclusion of the conference, probably by early next week. So you can access them there and feel free to share those with your colleagues as well. Just a couple more things. We will be using the Zoom platform for each of our sessions. And there are 2 ways that we want to encourage you to interact with us and the presenters. The 2 features that I want to encourage you to use are the Q&A button. It's typically at the bottom of your screen, but I guess it depends how your Zoom is set up. We want you to use the Q&A to type questions that you have for the presenters. So Q&A feature for questions that are to be presented to the speaker of each session. At the end of each session, we've set aside some time to address those questions and answers, time allowing. There's also the chat box, and you may have noticed that both some of the facilitators today and some of your fellow attendees have already been using the chat box. We're happy for you to do that. Please use the chat box to communicate with each other and to share ideas, thoughts you're having as you're learning, other resources you might be familiar with. We really want to encourage you to do that, both to stay engaged with the material and to benefit your peers with your information and knowledge. You can control who can see your chat comments. So if you click on chat at the bottom, there's a section that says to, T-O, and there's an arrow, a drop-down arrow, and you can select that only the panelists can see your comment, or you can change it to panelists and all attendees, and that means everyone can see your comment. So if you want everyone to see it, just make sure it's set so that everyone can see it. And if you only want the panelists to see it, just make sure it's set that way. This was also in the program you received. It's just a little brief orientation to Zoom, do want to reassure you that all attendees are automatically muted and their cameras are automatically turned off, so you don't have to worry about that. And it does just orient you to where the chat and the Q&A functions are. Everyone attending will receive a certificate of attendance for the sessions that they did attend. You'll be receiving those next week sometime. The MHA of New York State has also been able to provide us with CTLE credits for educators in New York. They're approved for 3 of the sessions: today's session 2 and 4, and tomorrow's session 2. And if you go to our conference webpage, there are instructions about what you need to do to secure those CTLE credits. And almost last but not least for me is just a brief disclaimer here. As a federally funded center, I do just want to make it clear that the opinions expressed throughout this conference represent the views of the presenters and do not reflect any official position of the Department of Health and Human Services or SAMHSA, just to be clear. And before I turn it over to Amy Malloy, I did just want to acknowledge some of our other colleagues who are on this session. First, I want to acknowledge that we have 2 ASL interpreters with us, Christina and Kimberly. You'll see them if you select the gallery view on your screen. They'll be with us throughout today and tomorrow to make the conference accessible. We have a couple other folks. We have Katy Rivera, who's managing the chat box. So you'll see her responding to questions or comments within the chat. And we also have PJ Wanger, who will be responding to your Q&A comments, and she'll come back on at the end of this session to facilitate the Q&A period. We have a few others in the background supporting us, but I think those are primarily the names that you will see. So with that, I want to turn it over to Amy Malloy, Project Director with the School Mental Health Resource and Training Center at the Mental Health Association in New York State. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Anne, and a special thank you to the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center for the opportunity to co-sponsor this very important and timely event. A little bit about the Mental Health Association first. We are a chapter of Mental Health America. We have a long and rich history of offering mental health awareness to youth, adults, families, schools, and communities across New York State. We also have a strong network of 26 affiliate members. They cover approximately 50 counties, and they offer everything from peer support services to information and referrals. They provide housing and day programs, clinical services, and crisis response. So we have been, we have a strong presence in New York that we're really, really proud of, and really have welcomed this opportunity to connect with many of you in New York and beyond. You know, at the Mental Health Association, our mission really is to raise awareness about mental health, to end stigma and discrimination, and to promote wellness and recovery. And it's really within that context that we began thinking and having some conversations with our board about 10 years ago about how powerful it would be if we could educate people from an early age. And with that, we began talking about mental health education in schools, and we're really proud to say that New York was the first state to have a comprehensive requirement that schools teach about mental health as part of the K-12 curriculum. And so it's from there too that I'm so happy that you're going to hear from a young person, Caroline, in a few moments, because it is her voice and her experience that really drives the work that we do. And I know it drives the work that you do, and that's why you're here. So just a little bit about the Resource Center. Thank you. Thanks, Anne. When we began talking about mental health in schools, we also had the opportunity to engage with our state partners, New York State Office of Mental Health, New York State Education Department, and we formed an advisory council that was representative of lots of stakeholders across the state. And what we knew was that we needed to be able to have an opportunity to provide support and resources to schools to implement this law. And so with that, we advocated for funding for a resource center, and we're funded through New York State. This year, we also have some additional funding from the Mother Cabrini Health Foundation to help us provide some education to families. But we really took this approach about mental health education to be a public health approach, saying that we can't just teach young people about mental health. We want the same messaging, the same language, the same information to be provided to educators as well as family members. And so, with that, we developed a resource center that was able to provide some resources and information for everyone in the school community to help raise awareness. This is our homepage. We are constantly adding new information and new content, so I encourage you to visit us at some point in the next couple days and learn a little bit more about what we do. On the next slide, this is kind of a sampling of some of the back to school resources that we have been providing. A few weeks ago, we enlisted a few panels of educators to talk to us about their experiences in the last couple months of the previous school year, talked about the challenges, really interestingly talked about the opportunities and kind of the unintended benefits of working remotely and working remotely, providing remote learning to students. That was a really great conversation. Those recordings will be there for you to view. We also have lots of trainings, both live webinars and self-paced online trainings. As was stated earlier, we have the opportunity to provide CTLEs in New York State for some of the sessions. We're happy to be able to do that. And then really we've just been focusing on what are some instructional strategies that can help educators get back to the beginning of the school year, focusing on student mental health, building resiliency, building connections, which is so important for young people and was a little bit challenged in that remote learning environment. I think at the end of the day, I kind of go back and forth between how difficult this time is and also how exciting it is in some ways, because we are stepping outside the box and we're kind of looking at learning in a way that we hadn't looked at it before. We're talking about mental health in a way that we haven't talked about it before. And today and tomorrow's sessions, I think, are two really great examples of how we can kind of rethink youth mental health, student mental health, how we approach learning. And there's some really great sessions lined up for you in the next couple of days. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be with us. As Anne said, this is a really busy time and we appreciate that. But thank you for being here with us. And now I think we're going to turn it over to our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate that. Thank you for being with us. Let me just advance the slide. Here we go. So we're really excited today to have Caroline Shea with us. Caroline is a 2020 graduate of Point Pleasant Borough High School in New Jersey. So somebody who experienced the challenges of graduating during the pandemic. This fall, she'll be attending Johnson & Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island, where she'll be studying sports entertainment and events management. But that's not why we brought her, although that's wonderful, and congratulations, Caroline. In high school, Caroline helped create a website called Dawn, Depression Anxiety Wellness Network, with some of her peers to help kids and students navigate day-to-day activities and help them gain access to resources that could help them with different coping skills. And she has a bit of a personal story to share as well. So we're really happy to have Caroline with us today. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline, and I'm just going to be letting you know a little bit about my point of view as a former high school student and a student in general with mental health. So just a little bit before I start speaking, I'm Caroline. I just graduated Point Borough. I'll be going to Johnson & Wales. I love to cheer. I was a cheerleader all through high school, and I will be in college. I did marching band, and I have two sisters, and they are my best friends. My older sister is 20, her name's Kirsten, and my younger sister is Casey, and she is 16. So Casey, she's 16 years old. She'll be a junior in high school in the 2020-2021 school year. She throws for track. She plays field hockey. Those are her two best friends, Lily and Noelle. And she has a bubbly personality, and she is so happy. But what people don't always see is she has ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, and she has fear of leaving the house. So every day she takes 9 different vitamins and medications. She's had to change her diet, but it's not something that the average person can see about her. But that's just something I've always grown up with this sister who has something that's a little bit different than everybody else, but it's hard to see. You can go to the next slide. So for her specifically, she has her schedule. And when something changes in her schedule, whether it's a field trip, a fire drill, there's a substitute that she didn't know, a pandemic, it's hard for her to refocus and be like, okay, this is still my schedule. Because if it goes from English to math to science and there's a fire drill in between math and science, she can't focus on science anymore. And so having an IEP, I was put into her IEP saying, if need be, she can text me and I can go to the class that she's in to help her calm down. And having that consistency is something that really helped her, whether it was me, whether it was her designated teacher that she had most of her classes with, whether it was a place that she could go. Having consistency throughout the day helped her so much, as well as having backups. Like if I wasn't in school one day, she knew, okay, well, this teacher's always here. And if that teacher's not there, then this teacher's always there. So she always had a backup. She was never scrambling and trying to figure out, like, what do I do next in school? So it sounds really strange, but something that helps and that I've seen help is to have a safe place that is not guidance. For a bunch of my friends who also struggle with mental illness, it was the performing arts department, and it was going to the acting room or to the band room. And it was just a place where they could feel safe and at home, not in guidance. I only say this because when my sister was a freshman, she was having a panic attack and an anxiety attack, and she knew to go to guidance if she needed help. When she got to guidance, she sat in the waiting room for 15 minutes, which only made the anxiety grow. So sometimes if you go to guidance, they will help so much. But if there's a wait, it just lets that anxiety build up and it actually makes it worse. So having a backup plan and a backup place to go, just in case the guidance is full and there is a wait, will help de-escalate their panic attack a little bit quicker than if they're just sitting and waiting for a guidance counselor. I know it's virtual this year, so it's hard to have a guidance because there's no office they can go to. So you really want, as a teacher, it really helps to get to know the kids. Like I loved it when my teachers on the first day, they didn't straight out just say, this is the curriculum. Like this is what we're doing this year. They were like, who are you? I'm teaching you all year. I need to get to know who I'm teaching. And just make like a slight connection and just say hi to your students on the first day. It's virtual for some of you, and I know that's very strange. Some of my classes are going to be virtual, and it's a very odd experience. You also want to make sure that there's resources available even though you're not in school. My school, I created something called Dawn when I was a sophomore into my junior year. It's the Depression, Anxiety, and Wellness Network, and it is a website that has resources, a journal, crisis lines. It has like breathing sections and yoga, and it's this full functioning website that students can log on by themselves and just say, okay, I need help, or I just need to breathe. I need help breathing, or I need to do a little yoga. And it's an independent website, so the students don't need to feel like, okay, I'm going to the school for help. It's the school's offering help, but the student can take it upon themselves to use it. So virtual learning it's hard. I had to do it all throughout the spring of my senior year. And it's something that you just want to remind yourselves and remind the kids that, like, this isn't permanent, and it's hard. It's a very difficult thing. But you just want to make sure that the students know that you're there if they need them for something other than academics. Because knowing that they have like a mentor or a little bit of a friend will help them learn, because they're not going to feel like, oh my God, this is my teacher. If they find out that I'm stressed, if they find out that I had a bad day yesterday, it's not going to go well for the student or the teacher. And I'm only speaking from experience throughout my time at high school with my sister. Like, she would text me throughout the middle of the day and say, I'm in this classroom, this is happening, can you help? And I would just go to her classroom and I would be like, okay, what is the situation? And it would really help to have, like, her teacher was on the same page and they were like able to figure out what's happening, okay, and then just take a breath. And throughout virtual, it helps to just check in, whether it's a daily check-in and you say like, okay, every day here's your like do now check-in. It's on my website or it's on Google Classroom or through the Remind app. Because my sister gets very bad anxiety to email her teachers because she finds it so formal and so like, this is how you write an email. And sometimes she just needs to be like, hey, I'm having a bad day, or can you help me with this assignment? And it's something a little less formal, especially for like your middle school kids who are just learning how to like really send emails and kind of be professional about it. It's really helpful to have like a chat box or a remind system or a little thing in Google Classroom where they can just talk whenever they want to. Just something else that I got to do in high school was, this is something more for the guidance perspective. My school started a youth mental health club, basically, and I was the president. And they were the kids who went to like mental health conferences based towards the youth, based towards kids. So they could understand and be like the leaders of the school. It was really helpful because it wasn't an adult conference that they were trying to teach kids with. They weren't trying to say, here's all the clinical stuff. You're a child, go learn it. It was more like, we know that you're teenagers and you're in high school. So this is how you can experience it. And this is how you can understand it and really learn about it without it being too technical for the student to understand. I have had a very personal experience with mental health, and I don't really know the clinical side of it. But what I've learned is that you just have to be patient, and they're just kids who get a little bit more nervous sometimes. And I know it's harder as a teacher than it is as a sister. I see her as a different way than the teachers do, but you just have to check in and make sure that the student feels safe, and pretty much that's it. I don't know. That's pretty much it. Just want to make sure that they're comfortable in the school and virtually.
So we encourage you to put your questions in the chat box. Caroline, we just had a comment in the chat box that one of our participants, Stephanie Hartman, just wanted to thank Casey for us. So brave of her to allow you to share her story and your connection with this. So appreciative. So just a comment for you, but no questions are coming up. I just have a question though, Caroline. Is there something that you can tell the educators, since you're going to be going on to college, that would help somebody like your sister? And that was one of the questions that just popped up in the chat box. How will your sister deal with you being at college this school year?
That's definitely a big concern for her because she sees patterns very easily. And when she was in 7th grade, she went to an outpatient program and she didn't come to school. And then 2 years later, she went to an outpatient program. It was at Gen Psych, and She didn't go to school. So in her mind, me not being there, she sees herself not being able to get through the school year. So we've put a system in place where she would text me when she gets nervous. And even though I can't be there, one, she can always still text me when she gets nervous. Two, we've set it up so that she has the same teachers as last year. So there's consistency from year to year. And going virtual, it's a little bit different because she's not going to be in school, but when she's doing her school, my mom will be around. So she'll have a familiar face to get her to start the year, and then she'll get in a groove, and once she gets the consistency in the schedule, she'll be able to kind of see the rest of the years it's going to be okay. Even though I'm not right next to her, we'll kind of like phase it out instead of just saying go into junior year, if that makes sense.
Okay, and another question that's come up, Caroline, was how old was your sister when she was diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety?
We started seeing my parents more. I was very little, but they started seeing symptoms and really like a diagnosis when she was about 5. But I don't think she got actually diagnosed until she was in about 5th grade. But they knew that she was a fussy baby, and then you could just see, since they diagnosed, they're like, oh, well, that was a symptom. Oh, and that was a symptom. So when she was a very little, like about 5, but she actually got diagnosed and they started treatment and stuff when she was about 5th grade.
Okay, and we have 2 questions that are similar. Could you please tell us a little bit about how you started the Youth Mental Health Club, and how were the youth identified that were chosen for the Youth Mental Health Club in the high school?
So when I got to high school, they had the Youth Wellness Council already set up. It was started with help of SPTS, which is the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide. And they started guidance chose kids who were well-rounded, who were compassionate, who teachers recommended, saying like, this is a genuinely nice kid who can feel and be compassionate towards those. So my freshman year, I was included into this group. I got invited to join, and it was a great intro to see a little bit more of my sister's people, I guess you could say, without just seeing my sister. Like I could learn a little bit about it to help her. And then I stayed in the club all 4 years, ended up being the president my senior year. And we went to conferences, and we had wellness summits at school. And it was just a way for kids to help kids instead of teachers helping kids.
Okay. We have a question. My daughter has a ton of anxiety, ASD, and struggles with change. Does your website offer the opportunity to connect with others experiencing the same things?
We don't have users connect with other users, just for privacy and for we don't want to ever, it's more the privacy, but being a school, we don't really want the user's identity or any personal information going out there. So when we created it, we created places where the student can go and talk to somebody, but it's not necessarily another peer, just for privacy issues.
Okay, and Caroline, lots of questions for you, but do you believe that online virtual classes are beneficial for your sister to flourish as well, or even better as physical classrooms, assuming teachers establish the same efforts of friendly communication?
I think if the teachers communicate, for my sister specifically, communication is the biggest thing. It's going to be a little bit harder online just because it's different. It's something she has to learn new, but as her teacher has been amazing with communication and just saying like, if you're struggling, if you need a little help, like reach out to me. I'm available for all school hours, not just the class, not just the hours you have me. So I think being able to communicate is one of the biggest things. It will be a little bit difficult, but it will definitely make the experience a lot easier.
Okay, and a couple more questions about the Mental Health Club. How would a student start a mental health club in school? I have a few students who just discussed doing this. I think you're incredible. And how many individuals are in the group? And how do you manage with confidentiality within the club?
So we have about, I believe there's about 20 kids in the Youth Mental Health Club. And if you go to SPTS and Second Floor Hotline and you look up, they have a lot of summits where you can take students and they will learn there how to start their own wellness group. I know specifically in like Ocean and Monmouth County, New Jersey, that's where we learned about our club, was the summits and going places. But if you reach out to SPTS, which is the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide, they are a big supporter of these clubs. As for Dawn, that was a personal website that I created through my software engineering class. My teacher said, you have to make something that'll help somebody else. You're not going to come in this class and make video games. So I saw an opportunity. I got my 2 friends on board and we created this website to help separate from the club. So they're 2 different things.
Okay. Question, how can we do this if our school doesn't allow students to use their cell phones in class? Do you have any ideas for that?
Yeah, so the only reason I was allowed to have my cell phone was because of my sister's IEP. My school doesn't really let us have cell phones in class all the time either. So knowing like if a child gets really anxious or really nervous or a student gets really nervous, let them know, almost like a buddy in each class. Be like, okay, well, when I go to English, I'm with Sarah. Sarah's in my English class. We're good friends. She can help me if I get nervous. When I go to math, John, he's in my class. I know that he's there and he's safe. It's just, and so keeping that consistency, and if that person's not there, then they can be like, okay, in my next class, this person's here. And so it kind of gives them like, almost like a friend or a safe person in each class, so that when they get nervous, they can say like, okay, this person's here. I'm going to be okay. We're together. I can do this. I mean, it's going to be a little bit harder virtually, but at least in person, if you can't like text somebody that you specifically need help, letting them know that they have a person in each class or a friend in each class will really help them get from class to class.
Okay, and some other questions. I'm going to combine these 2. So what other accommodations or modifications were successful for your sister? What things were tried and did not work? And what would you suggest for someone who is 11 years old, who has ADHD and anxiety, and how their school can help?
So my sister, she has an IEP, so she doesn't have to take standardized testing. And her academic classes are in an elementary style room. So she's in high school, so she doesn't switch classes for academics. She has one teacher all day, which helps with the anxiety of switching classes. She leaves his classroom for specials. So like she takes an art class and she takes a Spanish class, but majority of her day is based in his classroom, and that helps tremendously because it minimizes the amount of teachers she sees, and she gets to leave for lunch. And then for the things that didn't work was just saying, go to guidance when you're scared. I mentioned that earlier. She had a bad experience in guidance. So once they found, she connected really well with the social worker at our school. So that almost became like her guidance counselor. We found somebody she connected with and we went for it. Instead of finding somebody to try to connect with her, we went with who she was comfortable with originally. As for the 11-year-old, they're still in, I believe, middle school, if not elementary school. So they still have guidance at those schools. You don't really use them because the kids are kind of little. You just want to talk to the child's teacher, either at parent-teacher conference night, set up a conference, and you want to like say, this is my kid, and my kid's not exactly the same as other kids. And that's what my mom did with all of my sister's teachers. She was like, this is Casey. Casey has blank, blank, and blank. And the teacher was like, okay, what do I need to do to help? And you gotta, because the kid's little and she's 11, it's hard for her to speak up. So you need to be the advocate and tell her teacher, be like, this is Casey. She has ADHD. Sometimes this will happen. And it does, do this. And let them know what works for her instead of them trying to figure it out.
And they're asking if you can share some of the activities that the club does or did and the summits.
Yeah. So we held in October, we did a mental health awareness day. So we had in our gym, no students went to gym that day. It was set up with vendors like SPTS, Second Floor Hotline. We had some yoga studios come. We had like a wide variety of mental health awareness and resources come. We had yoga. We had like the Youth Wellness Club at our school. We also had a booth while we were running it. We had some dogs come, and they were like the service dogs, and they came, and people got to go around and like learn at their own pace. And it was a whole day. So when you had gym class, because everybody has to have gym, they went to the summit and they were like, okay, these are the resources I know available. And we got to kind of let the students go at their own pace. Also, in the beginning of the year, we have like a spirit day, which is super fun. There's activities, there's bonding. And I got to present my website, Dawn, saying like, this is a resource you can use. So it's just integrating it, not into the curriculum, but just into the students' day activity. So it's not like a choice whether they can learn about it, but they have to learn about it, but it's at their own pace. You're not forcing anything on them. We also, the summits, we went to one at Brookdale Community College, and it was like for all of the other youth wellness clubs and other students. So it was a student-based summit taught by more professional people, which was really fun. It was a full day thing. We had speakers, we had like workshops, we got to work with each other, we did some breathing, we did some yoga. So it was kind of interactive, and they were run through the Society of Prevention of Teen Suicide.
And a question about you. One of the participants wants to know, has this had any academic effect on you? It's a lot to take on as a young woman.
I put my academics first. So I haven't, it didn't take an academic effect on me. So my junior and senior year, I was in an advanced software engineering class, which is where I learned how to create this website. So I worked on the website during that class. And then the Youth Wellness Club was either before or after school. So I just included it into my daily schedule. There were times that I did miss a day at school for like a field trip. One day, Dawn was featured on News 12. So I had a day of filming. And like I went to go present at the superintendent's meetings of Monmouth and Ocean County to teachers. But I made sure to get my schoolwork done before or after. I was really in communication with my teachers, and they were very understanding when I would miss class. But yeah.
Okay, and a question, do you have any adults as part of your club to guide members when situations arise that teens may not be able to handle alone?
Yeah, so the club is run by Miss Needham and Miss Sal, which are two of our guidance counselors at the school, and the social worker at our school. So those are the ones who actually run the club. So it is a guidance run club. So there are adults who help us learn and who help us navigate throughout the situations once they arise. So we're not just doing it by ourselves.
And a question, Caroline, from a school near you. Are you able to add local schools onto your website that are not listed? Certain Ocean County schools have school-based counseling programs that I think would benefit to have on her website. Both Brick Township high schools have counseling programs separate from guidance office as an added support for students. So are you able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, for Dawn, we have about 8 schools throughout Ocean County that currently use it. There's like emails in the information at the top right of the website. And if you email either me or either of the programmers, we will get back to you and we can help you integrate and set up your school in the resources.
Okay, and another question, Caroline, how do you take care of yourself as a supportive and understanding student?
It's sometimes very hard to go from a full day of school with my sister to living at home with her. And it's not just my sister that I can help. I've been very fortunate enough to help other kids, like my friends I have one friend who has really bad anxiety, but she loves to perform. So before performances of a musical or a play, like I can help calm her down. And I try to take some time for myself, but because I like to do it, it really isn't so much of a burden. It's more of like I get to help people, which is super awesome. But there are times like when I'm cheerleading, I'm just focusing on my cheer and just that's where I am in the moment. When I'm in marching band, when I was in high school, like I did that in the moment. And you really learn to like focus on what you're doing instead of worrying about everything at one time, because that would just be way too much to handle.
Another question, Caroline. Did you find that students were able to open up and express their concerns about mental health issues during the summit?
Yes, they were during the summit outside of our school that I got to go to. It was really interesting to hear other students' perspectives that weren't from my school, and everybody was very open and very into talking. When it was in our school, it was a little bit quieter just because everybody knew everybody, so it was a little bit, kids were more hesitant because they didn't want to like say something and then somebody else hear it, but we got a lot of feedback more privately than speaking up in front of everybody. But there were a bunch of kids who were like, hey, I really want to join this club, or hey, this is a really cool resource. So we heard a lot of feedback, but some of it just wasn't very public, just from the students' comfort level.
Okay, Caroline, I'm not sure if you're going to know this answer, but someone is asking, what about grades K-3 resources, specifically elementary age?
I don't know the specific resources. I was little when my sister was little. We're only 2 years apart. So when she was from K-3, we didn't have a lot of resources in place for her because she wasn't technically diagnosed yet. All I knew was that she didn't go to school a lot and she was having like temper tantrums, but I was like, kids have temper tantrums. So I didn't really know. I know looking back now that you want to talk to the talk to the teacher. I know I've said this, but I don't really know the specific guidance resources. I just know that if you can talk to the teacher, maybe they'll know resources or they'll know specifics of what they can do. I don't know the specific guidance resources or anything for that though.
So maybe Amy, can you address that question also? K-3 resources?
Yes, absolutely. So, and can you just repeat the question so I make sure that I heard it all?
So the question was, what are resources for K-3 elementary school children?
So, what a lot of schools are doing beginning in elementary school is really beginning to implement some social emotional learning activities. And there are certainly an array of resources, places where you can go to find programs. I would recommend a first look at CASEL, CASEL.org. That's the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning. They actually have some program guides that review a lot of social emotional learning programs and the research specifically into those programs. There are some outcomes that we know from research that we get from social emotional learning programs, like fewer disruptive behaviors, better academics, better attendance rates, et cetera. And so through the CASEL guides, you can really look at certain programs and see how do they align with those evidence-based outcomes. But also I think just the idea of bringing social emotional learning into the classroom at that level is so important. You know, when we advocated for mental health education, it was really talking about this Tier 1 universal approach to educating students and providing them with support so that both the students who might be struggling will benefit from it, but so will all students. And it's really about just building the capacity for our young people to learn to recognize their emotions, to manage their emotions, to build positive relationships It's really coping strategies so that students have those as lifelong skills and they begin to develop them in elementary school. So I was looking at your website, Caroline, and on there she has some links to things like breathing exercises, which is just a great strategy to teach even little kids to, when you're feeling stressed, here's how you can focus on your breathing. And if you go to YouTube, there's a ton of great little visuals that show kids how to belly breathe or how to breathe in through to a count of 4 and out for a count of 4. And just those like really basic skills are helping those young kids. We have some on our website as well, and we're in the process of developing a virtual wellness room that would include some of those strategies, similar to Dawn website, but it's a great website, Caroline. Nice job.
So no more questions, Caroline, but just some comments for you. Wow, thank you, Caroline. You presented wonderfully. Thank you so much, Caroline. Yes, all the best to your sister. Caroline, thanks for sharing. You're a very mature woman. And Caroline, thanks for sharing your story with us. Your sister is very lucky to have you.
Thank you, guys.
So I think that wraps up our questions and answers.
Excellent. Thank you, PJ. And thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Amy. I think there's been a lot of comments that said a great way to start the day, and I think they're absolutely right. Really appreciate you getting us going and focusing us in this way. Sorry about that. We are going to wrap up session 1. We want to invite you back at 10:15 for session 2. And Amy gave us a great segue. The next session is talking about social emotional learning, and will help orient you all into some of those foundational elements that were just being presented. I see some questions coming up, so let me just make sure we're all on the same page about how to access session 2. So starting at 10:15, session 2 will get going, but it is using a different Zoom link. So as we complete this session, you'll exit the Zoom and you will go back to either the program that we sent you, or you can go to the conference webpage, and I'll have Kati paste it in there one more time so you can have access to the conference webpage via the chat. And you're going to go to session 2 Zoom link. So each session has its own Zoom link. So hopefully that's not too confusing to you. Go ahead and take a 15-minute break, and we will see you back in session 2 at 10:15. We also encourage you again to complete the evaluation. So thank you, and see you in just a few.